Welcome to Your Financial Advocate with Greg DuPont from DuPont Wealth Solutions. As a practicing advisor and attorney, Greg teaches pre-retirees how to reduce debt and taxes and save with less risk so they have more spendable income and plan their way to a better life. Join us for this journey where Greg draws on years of experience and guest experts to help listeners achieve more spendable income for retirement.
Hello and welcome to Your Financial Advocate with Greg DuPont of DuPont Wealth Solutions. Greg, it's good to be back with you.
So Ann, welcome. Thank you for joining us here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Greg.
I'm looking forward to our conversation. You know, we talked a little bit before we got on live here, and you mentioned that this book was kind of your COVID labor of love. Tell me a little bit about your incentive and why you made this book, because it looks like you put a heck of a lot of energy into it.
Yeah. Well, I had been writing a blog about paying for college for what felt like a million years. Kind of started it just based on getting the same questions again and again and again from clients about college planning, and thought it would be helpful to just write them all down and share them with a broader audience. And then I realized as we came into the spring of 2021 and most of my spare time activities had disappeared, or spring of 2020, in this weird compressed time space environment that we're in, I realized writing a book was something I'd always kind of been interested in doing as a bucket list thing. And it felt like the time was right to do it. And so I collected a lot of the information that I had put out in my blog and stitched it together into a book, and How to Pay for College was born.
Well, I would say you're being humble by saying you stitched it together, because, when I read through the book, it was a great primer from beginning to end of the things that families need to know in their college savings and application journey, that whole thing. And as we are recording this, we're right on the verge of FAFSA season, right?
Absolutely.
And those letters tend to cause parents' hearts to stop beating for a while.
That is 100% correct.
So if you could sum up for a family that is the family that their kid's 16, they haven't done anything. They're feeling like, oh my gosh, we may not be able to pull this off. All these things are on the horizon. Where the heck do we get started? Do you have any good place for us to start that conversation for them?
Yeah. I think the really important thing for families to know is it's never too late to get started planning for college. But the earlier you start, the more choices your child is going to have when it comes to college. The good news for families is there are a lot of good pathways through college. And I'm not saying, plumbing school or whatever instead of college, which is also a great pathway. But I'm saying if your family is committed to college, there are good options for how you're going to get through there. You just need to be realistic about what's affordable for you and what you can do in the time that you have available from, starting to plan today and your child going to college when they're 18. And so if you are the parents of a 16-year-old, say, and you're looking at college for the first time, maybe your kid's maybe a sophomore or a junior in high school, a great starting point is to go to the Department of Education website, which is studentaid.gov. And there's a tool there called the Student Aid Estimator. And you can punch your financial data into that and get an estimate of what the federal methodology says that the FAFSA is going to tell you are able to pay for college each year. And if that's a horrifying number for you, then you should start looking around and seeing, what sorts of merit scholarships is my student going to be eligible for? What are the alternatives, like accumulating a lot of AP and IB classes in high school so we can graduate in 3 years, or doing one of those dual enrollment high school community college programs? Anything you can do to shorten your college time so that you can compress your college budget. I feel like it's also never too late to start saving for college, especially if you're in one of the many states that offers a tax benefit for 529 contributions, because that's some free added dollars that can come into your family's budget. But I really think for families that are close to college, the starting point is looking at your budget and figuring out what you can afford, and then mapping out some different pathways that are available to your student, given that budget. Do we have a budget for 4 years of college? If not, how do we dial that back, whether it's through community college or credits or scholarships or something else? The good news is college only costs $80,000 a year if you choose to pay $80,000 a year for college. If you're like the vast majority of us who thinks that's absurd, you will find plenty of choices at different price points.
Well, several years ago, I had an opportunity to have lunch with a fellow that was in the college planning business, and he one of the things that he impressed upon me was, just how if you take the time to look at the college decision from an outcome perspective, what is the likely degree? What is the likely work that comes out of there? And then what are the institutions that get you there for the most value, as opposed to just going to the $80,000 school and coming out with a human ecology degree or what have you? Not to cast aspersions on any, that's just the first one that came to mind for me. So, but it's never too early to start. What do you say to clients that say my kid is 2, and Biden is forgiving loans right now, and the cost of education is so expensive. I can't conceive of saving that kind of money for that particular purpose. The way things are inflating, it's going to be $100,000 a year when my kid is 18. How do you get them to wrap their heads around that something so foreboding and abstract, because it's 16 years down the road? How do you help them through that conundrum?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of really important points in all of this. One is, we see the headline numbers about college tuition inflation, and we see, things like Stanford's $82,000 a year, but in fact, for the last decade, the net price of college has stayed pretty flat. The net price being the actual amount that families pay for college. So very few families pay the list price of college. And in fact, last year, the average tuition discount rate, which was the amount of tuition that's not paid or the amount that's just taken off the top in the form of scholarships, was about 54%, meaning that for every $100 of tuition that's charged list rate, only $46 is being paid.
So it's like just about everybody that thinks about it and tries to use the system. It's like the used car salesman that says, this is the price, but let me go back to my boss and see if I can get you a better price on it.
Exactly. I mean, it's a lot like air travel, right? You never want to ask the person sitting next to you what they paid for their ticket. Because a lot of people are paying very different prices for the exact same service.
That's so odd. That's the case with education.
Here's what I would say why it's odd. At all of these top schools that are, $80,000 a year, probably between a quarter and a third of students are not applying for any financial aid at all. They go in there expecting to pay full price. So if you're the university administrator and you say, well, I have a wait list out the door at $80,000 a year, what should I charge next year? $75,000 or $85,000?
Yeah, see what the market will bear.
Because I got plenty of room to discount that for the other 2/3 of students if I can get these people paying these prices. So I think the big takeaway for parents is you don't have to pay $80,000 a year for your kid to go to college, multiplied by inflation factor. And nor should you save on the basis that that's what you're going for. I firmly believe that families of young children who value the notion of their child going to college should open a 529 and should start contributing something to it. My rule of thumb is if you're not maxing out retirement, then 10% of what you're contributing to retirement is the maximum amount you should be contributing to college. So for someone who's contributing $10,000 a year to retirement, the maximum amount they should put into college is $1,000 a year. And if you want to save more for college, you need to save more for retirement and have those numbers move in parallel. Kids who have college savings, regardless of the amount, enroll and graduate at higher rates than do those without. And of course, there's probably different cause and effect, right? If I expect my child to go to college, I'm probably going to save for college. And there's probably going to be some conversation along the way and some expectation setting along the way that you're going to college. But even for families where college isn't, for families of first generation students who have very nominal savings, those enrollment and graduation rates are higher when the kid has some amount of dollars available to them, even very small amounts. Your second point about what college should they go to and what's the outcome that you're trying to produce. There was a great survey done a few years ago, the Gallup-Purdue poll, and they surveyed adults who about their satisfaction and their personal feeling of success with their life and their career. And what they found was that people who self-rated as successful, when they went back to what their college experience was, it was never about what college they went to, big school versus small, urban versus rural, anything like that. There were 6 specific experiences that were consistent among people who self-rated as being successful. And those were things like feeling like a professor cared about them, finding mentors who could help them achieve their goals, participating in campus activities actively, and things like that. So none of it was about, did you go to Stanford or San Jose State or, Harvard or UConn? It was all about how you engaged with your college and how your college engaged with you. And those traits, those qualities being the springboards to success.
It's interesting. One of the things that I really liked about your book was there were a lot of checklists and guides and tools there for families to kind of work through in this planning process. What led you to put that type of format in your book? Is that your experience with people?
A lot of it was driven by experience, but I also really felt like I wanted my book to be a very practical guide to how to approach this. And for me in the writing process, one of the metrics for making sure that it was practical and actionable was when I got to the end of the chapter, could I figure out what the worksheet was going to be? And if I couldn't, then that meant that I hadn't provided enough actionable content in the book. You always hear the saying, knowledge is power, but it's really only as powerful as you make it. And so to get the power out of your knowledge, you have to put it into action. And I just feel like as an advisor, so often I see people who come to me very late in the process, whether it's college, retirement, something else. And I'm sure you see this in your practice as well, where they've spent so much time like trying to figure out what the perfect way to do something is that they've never actually done it. And so with college in particular, you have such a short time horizon to prepare for it, right? You have 18 years. That the sooner you get on this stuff and the sooner you take action, the better. I keep coming across parents of high school kids who have a savings account at the bank that's earning 0.01%. That's their college savings fund. And because, our 529 isn't great. And so then I was trying to figure out where to put it. Well,
put it somewhere.
Yeah.
Put it somewhere.
Your second best choice was better than nothing.
Yeah. So what, as we're sitting here in a market that is declining, and some would say that's got some bottom to go still, what would be your suggestion to somebody with regard to their 529 contributions and saving? Would you have any guidance without talking about any specific product, obviously?
Yeah. Well, so I think, this has been a really just a rotten year, with the triple bear market and stocks, bonds, and cash. 529s have I think one of the challenges that you find with 529s is that people get to this college savings process late in the game and sign up for more risk in their 529 savings than might be age appropriate. And so a lot of those people have really gotten clobbered. I do think it's important when you're looking at college savings to look at what your time horizon is and what's a risk appropriate allocation to have. The age-based funds tend to be quite good in that regard. Like in our plan in Oregon, you're in a lot of tips and commodities and very short-term fixed income, which has not done as horribly as the rest of the market. One of the great tools that you have available to you as the parent of a student who's been admitted to college is the financial aid appeals process. And I do hope that families avail themselves of that, just on the basis that, hey, my savings collapsed this year, even though I did everything right, everything I was supposed to. And a lot of colleges will make up the difference for that with additional aid, scholarships.
Can you dig into that a little bit more? I'm not sure if people know of that process.
Yeah. So let's talk about the financial aid process as a whole. So it starts with filing the FAFSA, which you do in fall of senior year. The FAFSA comes out October 1st every year. The FAFSA generates a number called your expected family contribution, which will change next year to your student aid index. Your expected family contribution is the amount that the formula says you should be able to pay. Now, the important thing to remember with the FAFSA is the FAFSA only guarantees you access to federal student aid, which is Pell Grants, student loans, and work study. Colleges may or may not choose to meet your financial need. And that is entirely at their discretion. So if you apply to a college that meets financial need or that offers financial aid on the basis of need, they will get your FAFSA, look at it and say, okay, this is the amount of scholarship, grant, work study, and loan money that we're going to offer you. When you've been accepted to a college, you can always go back to them and say, this isn't enough for me to come. So please do your best, Oliver. Please, may I have some more? And most financial aid officers are not like the orphanage in Oliver Twist. They are contrary to popular narrative that college is very exclusive and expensive, and you should just be grateful for the fact that they accepted you. Most colleges are actively trying to enroll and admit students. And if you come back to them and say, I need another $3,000 to come here because I could go to this other college that costs quite a bit less, a lot of them will offer additional funds. And in fact, my online course, the College Financial Plan, which is on my website, has an entire section that's about analyzing and appealing your financial aid award.
Fantastic. So I want to make sure everybody knows again about Ann's book, How to Pay for College by Ann Garcia, Garcia. And for the first 3 people that email me a request, I'm going to go ahead and buy a copy of this and send it out to you. So just jump on in and shoot me an email and make sure that you get a copy of Ann's book. If you're not one of the first 3, well, you can find it at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, all those kind of places, right, Ann?
That's right. Yeah.
Now, with regard to your website, just a little bit more about that. It's a FAFSA training kind of website. Sounds like.
Yeah. So my website is howtopayforcollege.com, just to make things easy. And I have tons and tons of content about the college planning process. So there's sections about the FAFSA. There's sections about 529s. There are just loads and loads of content, and a blog where I publish new content all the time. But I also created an online course because I found I was getting the same kinds of questions again and again and again from people about, how do I file the FAFSA? How do I prepare for the FAFSA? And so there's some really detailed, if you're a family of a high school student and you want a real roadmap for how to get from where you are now to applying to colleges that you can afford, my online course has all of that. It'll walk you through figuring out your budget, talking points for your kid in approaching the college process, last minute saving strategies, filing the FAFSA, strategies for preparing for the FAFSA to lower your expected family contribution, and then finding colleges that will meet your need, and finding scholarships that'll help fill the gap there.
And it sounds like you're on a mission to educate people on this process, because there's Lord knows there's a need for it.
Yeah.
So one person that may have gotten some education throughout our conversation here is my proverbial fly on the wall. And I always like to bring Eric back in here at the end of our conversation just to see what thoughts are bouncing around his head, because he has always got some insightful questions. So everyman, Eric.
Yeah, I have learned a ton, and I'm excited about the book. I'm excited that the audience, I know I don't count for one of those first 3 people to email you, Greg, so I won't email in. And I do have a question for you. In my life and in my travels and in my work and things that I've done, I've met a lot of young people that have had to do pretty much everything on their own due to their parents not being involved, or maybe they're a guardian of the state, or they're a guardian of another relative. Is there stuff in the book for them? Can they find some assistance on how to navigate this very, very tough subject, maybe if they don't have a guardian that's helping them with this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it is unfortunate that so many parents exit themselves from the process. And I would like to say 2 things to that point. The first is, if you're a parent who thinks your kid can do this on their own because you did it on your own, you're wrong. Times have changed, and your child's cost of college is a function of your ability to pay, not your willingness. And so parents who think their kids can just bootstrap this themselves are really handicapping their children in a really important race. So do know as a parent that you have a role to play here. And it's not just saving and budgeting and paying. It's doing the hard work of parenting, of managing your child's expectations, of guiding them to good choices that are not just academic and social fits, not just where their friends are going, but that are something that won't leave them with a lifetime debt burden that's going to constrain their choices forever and ever. So that's one group of people. Plenty of kids just don't have parents in the picture, or parents who are able to help in the picture. And so to them, I would say something quite different. There are strategies in the book. There's a ton of stuff on my website as well that talks about filing the FAFSA, the types of scholarships that are available, scholarships that you can get. My book has tons of information about different pathways through college, whether it's free community college or dual enrollment, or, making sure that you're getting college credit for the college credits that you earn in high school, because that's not automatic. And so, things that you can do to shorten those timelines are always helpful. I would also say every state has state-based financial aid in addition to the federal financial aid. So if you are that student, make sure that you're leveraging your state's programs. Make sure that you're in your high school's college and career center, because there are always people there who are well informed about those programs. They vary tremendously from state to state. Make sure that you know about how to sign up for free community college if your state offers it, because usually that's something that you have to do while you're still in high school. And there's a great program out there that is active in, they have a national organization, and then they have chapters in a lot of states called College Possible. And what College Possible does is they work with high school students who are maybe not on the path to college, whether it's lack of family support, lack of family history with college and whatnot. And they have this terrific program that mentors students, not just through the high school process to get them to college and the college application process, but to make sure that they succeed in college and graduate and go on to productive careers. So that's another great organization to
And I also want to ask you for your contact info for anybody that wants to reach out to you for this amazing opportunity.
Oh, yeah. And thank you so much for having me on the show. Best place to find me is on my website, which is howtopayforcollege.com. It's got my contact links and links to the book and my online course, The College Financial Plan.
All right, perfect. Again, both of you, thank you so much for the show today. This has been fantastic. And our last thank you goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to Your Financial Advocate with Greg DuPont. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Greg comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. And we humbly ask that you share this podcast, rate it, and leave a review, as this actually does help others find the show. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at DuPont Wealth Solutions, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Your Financial Advocate. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of DuPont Wealth Solutions. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.